is Carla and welcome back to the studio, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Step It Up Saturday. This Saturday we are going to use the In the Moment stamp set. This stamp set contains 3 images for coloring, which we are going to be doing a lot of. So each video is going to have some speeding up with some cool music. And then it also has 3 different greetings, and we'll be using all 3 of these. I'm also going to be using in my the other 2 cards, I'm going to be using the Delightfully Eclectic DSP right here. Now, this pack is something else, and I just needed to put this in there. I actually split this pack of paper with a friend. This is a really big pack. This has 48 sheets for each of 12 double-sided designs, so it's a big pack of paper. So we're going to be using some of that in 2 of our cards. Yeah, 2 of our cards. So for my first card, I have a piece of Very Vanilla Thick. This measures 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. And then I have another piece of Very Vanilla. This is the regular, not the thick, measuring 5 1/4 by 4. So for my card base, I'm going to fold and burnish this. And we'll set this aside. And then on this piece, I am going to stamp my image of the woman sitting at a window drinking coffee. And I'm going to stamp the sentiment that says, "You're in my thoughts." I will be using my Early Espresso ink. Okay. One of the things that I wanted to mention, so when you use photopolymer stamps, those are clear. So it doesn't matter how you put on your block, because you can see through the stamp and see that you're stamping it straight. For the red rubber, it's a little bit different. It's hard to see, if you're lining it up straight or not. A little tip, when you put your stamp onto the block, line it up with the base of it, so when you go to stamp, look at the bottom edge of your block, and if you have that straight, then you should have your stamp straight. The same applies especially for any greetings. So I'm going to stamp this woman image. I'm going to ink it up really well. And I'm going to stamp it in this bottom left-hand corner. Try to stamp it. Let me bring in, because I am on the white grid paper and I'm using vanilla, it's a little hard to see where the edge of the cardstock is. Let me re-ink this again. And then I'm going to stamp this right down here. Just hold it there for a moment so the ink transfers. Okay. And then I'm going to bring in the greeting that says, "You're in my thoughts." Just make sure we do it the right way. Ink this up. And then I'm going to stamp that up in this corner. See if I get it straight. Ooh, yes, straight. Okay, let's close this up. This is all the stamping that we're going to do for this card. Now, this is the part in which I'm going to speed up. So let me explain what it is that I'm going to do. So for this image, I'm going to use our watercolor pencils. Now this is a combination of colors from both the assortment 1 and 2. So I'm using Early Espresso, Balmy Blue, Old Olive, Night of Navy, Flirty Flamingo, and Whisper White. I'm going to combine these two to color her skin since we don't have a color that's a skin tone. Crushed Curry, Cherry Cobbler, and Cajun Craze. Now after I color in with these pencils, I'm going to bring in one of our blender pens. This isn't our Stampin' Blends, but this is a blender pen, and I will then blend the colors well, actually I will do all the coloring first, and then I'll come in with the blender and I'll blend with that. I'll also have a piece of scrap paper so I can clean off the blender pen in between the colors, and then when I come back, we'll assemble the card. Okay, so we blended out some of that pencil, all those pencil lines. I did get a little bit of the brown when I went to do the sky part in the window, but it's okay. It'll be alright. So I'm going to bring in my card base and bring in my dimensionals. I'm going to add some to the back of our colored piece. Okay. So all of our cards going to be doing coloring. This was the only one that I'm doing where I'll be using the watercolor pencils. The other two I'll be using the Stampin' Blends, and I'll also be doing some paper piecing on both of them using that delightfully eclectic DSP that I showed you a moment ago. Okay, so I'm just going to center this on my card base, and then I'm going to bring in the pastel adhesive back sequins. And I'm going to take your pick tool and I'm going to place a larger one right here. And then the smaller ones, to line them up, I'm going to put one on either side of this larger one. Like so. Okay, so that is our first card. On to our second. Okay, so for my second card, I have a piece of fresh Freesia measuring 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4.25. I have a piece of bubble bath measuring 5.25 by 4, a 3 by 3 piece of basic white, and a 2 by 2 size Delightfully Eclectic DSP. This is one of the patterns in that paper pack. So I'll start off by folding and burnishing my card base. And we'll set that aside. Then for this piece, I'm going to bring in my Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And I'm going to stamp the greeting that says, sometimes the most productive thing you can do is relax. Ink this up. Ink it up really good. And then I'm going to stamp that down in this corner. And again, I lined up the greeting on my block. So hopefully I didn't prove myself wrong and this will stamp straight. Okay, that's good. I'll take that. And then for this piece, we're going to use the Painted Texture 3D embossing folder. I will put that piece in here and run that through in my on my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. So I'll set that aside. That's one of the things we're going to do when we speed up. On this piece, I'm going to take the image of the woman looking out, what I would think would be the water or maybe the beach, and she's holding a glass of wine. And I'll center that on this piece. It doesn't have to be straight because I will be die cutting this out after we're done paper piecing and coloring in the image. Okay, so I'll set that aside. And that will be after I do it, like I said, after I do all the coloring and the paper piecing, I will then be using this die, which is from the Stylish Shapes dies. I'll be using this square for that. So I'll set that aside. And then, oh, I'm going to need that again. So for the paper piecing, I'm going to do her dress in this piece of the Designer Series paper. So I'm going to take this piece and I'm really just going to focus on the area of the stamped image that has the dress. And ink that up. And then I'm going to stamp that onto the Designer Series paper. need to be Stampin' Up for that. Want to make sure that I get enough of the skirt. Alright, so we'll set that aside. We'll close this up because we're done with that. Okay, so let me explain now what I'll do with this. So I am going to fussy cut. Yes, fussy cut. It's not one of my favorite things to do, but sometimes I'll do it. So on this piece, I will cut out right on the stamped line of just the dress. So I'll go around her hair and then I'll cut her arms off, and the rest of all this image, I just want the dress. And then I will glue this onto this stamped image here. Now for the rest of this image, I'm going to bring in my Stampin' Blends. So I'm using both light and dark pecan pie. I'll use that on the railing. And then I have light gray granite. I'll use that for the wine glass. And the dark petal pink for the wine in that glass. I will use the dark fresh freesia for the band on her hat. I will use the light Cajun craze for the belt on her dress on the designer series paper. I have both the medium light bundle. This is number 700 and number 800. When these first came out, they went by numbers. Now they go by like medium light, medium dark. So I got 700 and 800 on that. And then for that's for her skin. And then for her hair, I got the deep number 200. For her hat, I have both the dark and light bubble bath. And then to make the image pop, I'm going to use the light pool party, and I will go around the edge of all of this. So for this part, the coloring, the fussy cutting, the die cutting, the embossing, all of that, I'm doing it all at the same time, and I'm going to speed that part up. So I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So now let's assemble our card. So I'm going to bring in my adhesive, and I'm going to add some to the back of my embossed piece. And I'll center that on my card base. I was aiming to have all of these look more fallish, but yeah, this one seemed like it was more like summer. So now I'm bringing some dimensionals, and I'm going to add it to the back of this image. I'll be doing the same technique with the paper piecing on my last card. Okay, so I will add this to my card base. As soon as I get the backings off. Okay, and I will add that out here, like so. And then I'll bring in my sequins again, and this time I'm going to use these pink ones. I think these are just, they're supposed to be white iridescent, but they seem to look more pinkish in color. So I'm going to use 3 of the larger ones on this. Put that one right there. Okay, so that is our second card. On to our third. Okay, so for my third card, we're going to be doing a little bit of everything. So I'm going to start off with a piece of Night and Navy measuring 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. I have a piece of Calypso Coral measuring 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. Another piece of the Delightfully Eclectic DSP. This measures 5 1/4 by 4. A piece of basic white measuring 4 by 4. And then I have another pattern of that Delightfully Eclectic DSP measuring 4 by 2. So to start off, let's fold and burnish our card base. This one's going to have more coloring to it, and we're going to do that paper piecing technique as well on this one. So I'm going to set that aside. For these 2 pieces, I will adhere these together and then attach it to the card base. But on this piece here, I'm going to stamp my greeting that says, let's see, you're always so good to others, be good to yourself too. And that I'm going to stamp up here using my Versamark ink and some white embossing powder. So we'll be heat embossing on this piece. Once I finish that, then I will adhere these 2 pieces together. Let's see, this piece here, I will stamp my image again in the Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and then my greeting, we got the Versamark ink, and on this piece here, on this pattern of DSP, I'm going to stamp the bottom part of this image. This is the blanket on her bed, and so I'm going to stamp that on here. I'm going to cut that off, and let's see, trying to get myself collected here on what I'm doing. There's just so many steps, and there's, a good portion of this I'm going to be speeding up, but some of the other parts, like the stamping, the image, I can do that beforehand. So I'm going to center this and stamp it. I'll be using the Stylish Shapes dies again. This time I'll be using the largest circle, and I'll die cut after I have colored this piece, stamped on here, and fussy cut, glued it onto this piece, and then I'll die cut it. Just like I did with the last card that we did. Okay, so I'll stamp that. And then we'll set that aside. I need that stamp again. Let me bring in this scratch paper here. And so I really just need the bottom half of this. And I'm going to stamp it out here. Okay, and there'll be this part here that I will cut, and it'll be this bottom part here that I'll be keeping. Okay, so we're done with that. Okay, put that aside. Alright, and then on this piece, I can stamp this and put my powder on. And this is going to be the test of how straight I have gotten it. Okay. Stamp it right there. Okay. And then I'll bring in my Embossing Editions toolkit, and I'll be using my white embossing powder. And I didn't use my embossing buddy to remove any of the static from my paper, so let's hope we don't have extra powder where we don't want it. Maybe a little crooked. I may end up with extra powder on here that I don't need. Again, because the paper's like so busy, it's hard to tell if I got any extra powder on there. Let's close this up. Put that aside. Put our, whoops, close up our ink. Okay, now, so I'm going to heat emboss this. We'll set that aside, and then we'll do all of our assembling at the very end. Then I am going to cut this out, and I'm going to keep this bottom half. I'm going to go around her feet and just keep the bottom half. Got powder all over the place. And then for this image, here's the colors I'm going to use. So again, for the skin tone, I'm going to use the medium light 700 and 800. For her hair, I'm going to use the deep 200. For the dog, I will use both dark and light crumb cake. For the pages of the book, I'll be using light petal pink. And again, just like I did with the other image, I will go around with the light pool party. It just makes the image pop. And then for her pajama pants, I'll be using the dark and light bubble bath. For the book and for the cup, for the coffee cup, I'll use the dark and the light Night of Navy. For the blanket that's wrapped around her, I'll use the dark and light Old Olive. And then for this pillow here, I'm using the light and dark Fresh Freesia. And then for this pillow back here, I'll be using the dark and light Calypso Coral. So I pulled in colors that are in this DSP. So I will see you in a little bit. Enjoy the music. Okay, I'm back. That seems like forever, but not when I get done editing. So I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to add some adhesive to this, and I'm going to adhere this to my Calypso Coral piece. And I'm going to place that there. A little bit of a confession. When this stamp set first came out, I'm thinking, was it with this annual catalog, or maybe it was our last, was it January to June mini, maybe? I mean, it's been a while that it's been out, and this is the first time I have placed any ink on this stamp set. That is like really sad, because I have a lot of stamp sets that are like that, including retired ones as well. So now that I'm doing videos, so now there's a reason, an excuse to start using them. And the same with all the designer series paper as well. Okay, so that's all adhered to my card base. I will bring in my dimensionals and I will pop this piece up. And I did the sample one of this. You know, I thought, part of me looks at it and thinks, well, it's a little busy. You know, I've used all the colors that are in the paper in my coloring. And then even like the embossing, I wanted to add, you know, that greeting to it. But at the same time, I think it looks kind of cool too. So we'll take this and we'll adhere this right here. And then I'll bring in my sequins again. And this time I'm going to use these ones that have more of the bluish tinge to them. So I'm going to add this one right up here. And then I'll use two of the smaller ones. Put one there and one down here. Okay. Whew. These were a lot of work, this one. Let me move this out of the way and let me bring in the cards that I made. So for my first card, we did this simple card, no embossing, die cutting, fussy cutting, just coloring with our watercolor pencils and our blender pen. That's our first card. And then our second card was a bit stepped up by using an embossing folder. And we did the coloring and we did some paper piecing and die cutting. And then for my third card, we just kind of did a little bit of everything. We did the same with the coloring, paper piecing, heat embossing, and die cutting. So I hope you liked today's cards. I'll make sure that we're still in the camera view. Actually, I could do it this way, be a little bit easier. So these are the cards that we made using the In the Moment stamp set. We did use every one of the stamps in the set. So I hope you liked these cards. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel and then click on the notification bell and it'll let you know when I have posted another video. So until next time, you have a blessed one. Bye bye.